Welcome to Chi-Chi-Chilean News. I'm Javier Cabrera. Join us here to get the latest and most breaking news in Chile. We now go live to field reporters Eduardo Salgado and Pablo Santana.
Thank you, Javier. Today marks a very important and revolutionary day in the Chilean government. Just recently, the four branches of Chile's armed forces overthrew the Marxist government ran by Salvador Allende in a coup d'etat. To some, this issue is going to be a life-changing event, but to others, this will be a real disappointment.
Rising tensions between Allende and democratic military regiments in the region has been growing ever since Allende's narrow victory in the 1970 presidential election. In the last few decades, a majority of the elections in Chile were characterized by the interference of two warring powers in the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union.
The United States had supported and financed the candidacy of right-wing former President Jorge Alessandri of the National Party. Salvador was not favored by the U.S. due to his strong socialist beliefs and warm relations with Cuba's Fidel Castro. During the 1950s and 1960s, the United States were highly influential in the results of the elections. The Central Intelligence Agency, under command of President Nixon, was ordered to prevent Allende's ascent to presidency, and they were successful in doing that. Allende was an unsuccessful candidate in the 1952, 1958, and 1964 presidential elections.
In the 1964 election, Eduardo Frei, a reformist political party leader, was the candidate opposing Salvador, who ended up defeating Salvador in a very narrow victory. The U.S. played a critical role in this victory with the amount of money they spent campaigning for Frei. It was estimated that the U.S. spent a total of $3 million campaigning. Now we go live to Javier with the economics of the situation.
At this period of time, the economy was at a critical point. Inflation was running at 30% and over 20% of the male population was reported to be unemployed. As a senator, Allende took his opportunity to start a revolution in the country. Allende decided to redistribute wealth in the nation and did not allow companies to increase their prices. Diplomatic relations with Cuba, China, and the German Democratic Republic were restored and the copper industry was nationalized. Allende put forth a strong campaign that had gained many supporters as he pledged to create a republic of working class that would take the economy out of chaos. Introducing a national health care service has flashed alarms to U.S. delegates. Allende's support level is rising, and this had President Nixon worried. Shortly after the United States put forward a variety of programs and strategies ranging from funding political campaigns to funding propaganda. Despite their effort, Allende won the election with a mere 36.6% of the votes. Immediately after Salvador's presidency, the CIA initiated their plan to end Allende's presidency in an indirect manner. They attempted to persuade Chief of Staff General René Schneider, however he did not support military action and political intervention. On October 22, 1970, Schneider's car was ambushed and he died in the hospital a few days later. It was discovered the two military groups behind this occasion were being supported by the CIA. We now go live to Eduardo Salgado on the streets of Chile.
Excuse me, sir. ¿Tú hablas inglés?
Yeah,
So, what's your opinion about Salvador Allende?
I don't like him. He stole the houses of the people. He tried to take the communists to Chile, and we don't understand that.
What are your thoughts about the impeachment of Salvador Allende?
I am very happy to hear that he has been taken out of the office. The main problem with Allende was the inflation. I feel horrible when I would come home from work and I have nothing to put on the dinner tables.
Can you explain the motives of the Chilean army and the CIA and why they took Salvador out of the office?
Salvador was Marxist, meaning that he bring the communists to Chile, while the goal of the United States and Chile army was to stop the spread of the communists by any means possible.
What is your opinion on Pinochet's military dictatorship compared to that of Salvador's communist government?
I hate it. I never feel safe, and I always watching my back whenever I leave the privacy of my home. If you speak against the government, it will be your last words.
Ever since the military dictatorship has been introduced, do you feel like any of your human rights have been stripped from you or your family?
No, my family has not been directly affected, but many of our friends were forced into exile and had lost their jobs. Others met worse fates. Some were murdered and thousands of others were captured and tortured.
Describe the challenges you and your family face while trying to cope with inflation.
We had to cut down on food and stop purchasing excessive unnecessary goods. We have to skip meals to try and conserve as much money as possible. My family is very fortunate because I did not lose my job during the inflation period. I feel very lucky to not be one of the men roaming the street looking for a day job.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Economically, Salvador had nationalized many banks and industries such as Purina. Grand amounts of money were spent on increasing education, health, housing, and child assistance. Shockingly, expenditures had increased from $562.8 million to $828.5 million. The economy was in complete chaos. Allende was the cause of Chile spending 56% of its exports on food, and the trade deficit increasing from $18 million to $255 million.
Inflation brought rise to many revolts in the country. Nationalists, Christian Democrats, and conservative students backed the revolts, calling Allende's resignation and military intervention. The Popular Unity Coalition that Allende formed was making a grand understatement. In June 1973, the armed forces attempted their own coup d'etat by tank commanders, warning the nation that the military was getting restless.
At the last stand, Allende was accused of violating the Constitution by his attempt to conquer absolute power and subjecting citizens to being under arrest during strict state control. At 9 a.m. yesterday, Chile became completely under control of Pinochet and his army. Constant threats were made towards Allende in an attempt to depose him. Despite the constant bomb threats, Allende emphatically refused to step down.
After hours of negotiation, Allende finally realized his time had come. He immediately addressed the public with his farewell speech, announcing the public about the coup and his refusal to resign. At 2:30, it was evident that Salvador Allende had committed suicide at the age of 65.
It has just been announced that Pinochet will be assuming the role of president. Just minutes ago, we were informed that Pinochet has issued an act of constitution. This act will impose an extreme censorship, and a new curfew will soon be established.
Wow, that is some pretty incredible news there, Pablo. Well, folks, you've heard it from the best. From all us here at Chi-Chi-Chilean News, good night.